Good morning. This morning's reading is from Mark 7, verses 24 to 30. From there, Jesus set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there. Yet he could not escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about it, and she came and bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile of Syrophoenician origin.
I beg you, please, cast the demon out of my daughter.
Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs.
Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs.
For saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter.
So she went home, found the child lying on the bed, and the demon gone. Listen to what the Spirit is saying to the church. Thanks be to God.
Now that was not really a nice thing for Jesus to say, to call her by that name. I mean, she was there to ask Jesus for healing. And that's what Jesus is supposed to do, healing. But instead of healing Jesus, instead of curing her daughter, instead of healing her, instead of doing all of that, he cursed her by calling her certain animal name. I mean, he didn't actually shout it to her, you're a dog, but there was no mistake in what he meant when he said, if there's anything left over, the dogs will get it. That he referred her as a certain animal name. And he let her know how irritated he was to her presence and her request. So what's happening in this text? Well, a little bit of context, I think, is going to really help us to understand what's happening here. Jesus was tired from all of his ministry, all the work the ministry demanded. So he needed to get some kind of relaxation, needed to have some vacation to get away from all the hustles of ministry and all the hustles of things that he's demanded by a lot of people. So he needed some time out to recharge himself, refocus, so that he doesn't get all irritated, all get rude. And so he finds himself, he's traveling all the way to the place called near the place of Tyre. It's a way away from his usual place of ministry. It's way up there, so he doesn't have to be bothered by other people. So he thought he was not going to be recognized by all these other people. He will be by himself. He could just take some rest for himself. But when you are as popular, as well-known celebrity healer like Jesus was, there were always bound to be some celebrity paparazzis looking after you and trying to find you and then get some photographs and some autographs. In this case, this local woman barging into Jesus to unnoticed and asking for Jesus' help in healing her daughter. Now, she probably didn't realize that Jesus was on a vacation, that Jesus was taking some time out and he didn't want her to be bothered. Maybe she did not notice there was a sign outside saying, "Do not disturb." She probably did not know all of that. But I think, my guess is that it wouldn't probably really matter for her, because when you're as desperate a mother as she was, when you have a child, a sick child with you, and there is nothing will cure that child, and then you hear somebody in town is there to cure your daughter, nothing will deter you, nothing will matter. You'll find your way to go over there. You'll be right there. Nothing will deter you. All the shame and ego and hesitation, nothing will deter you. No sense insensitive people will say things like that. Rudeness will not deter you to be there. You will find yourself to be there and to be and hang on to this person and pleading and begging until you hear yes. And that's what she did. That's what she did. She was a desperate and determined mother. But Jesus was in no mood for healing. He was irritated. He was irritated at her, irritated at her presence, irritated at her request, and he just blew up. Who let this dog in? Just blew up. I mean, Bruce, you just did a kind of tame version of that, but I think we don't hear that kind of things, but he just blew up. Who let this dog in? Right? So, and he was just letting her know, who do you think you are barging in this place, disturbing my peace, disturbing my quiet time? Who do you think you are? You are even a Gentile woman. I've got nothing for dogs like you. Letting her know. Letting her know. He was very insensitive, very dismissive, very rude and kind of bullish toward this poor woman who came to ask Jesus to heal her daughter. He was rude, folks. He was rude. He was very rude, like, somebody kind of rude. Right? He's kind of very sensitive, very, very rude. You know what I'm talking about. You would expect people like that to be rude, but not Jesus, right? To be rude like that, to call somebody by that name. I mean, if I were in that place, I wouldn't be that rude. I probably got irritated, probably get kind of annoyed, but I wouldn't call somebody by a certain name, right? I wouldn't be that rude, but Jesus did. So how do we regard this text? How do we deal with Jesus' kind of out-of-character life? If the text ended right there, this woman being rudely rejected by Jesus and Jesus went on with his ministry, if text ended right there, we would have some problem with Jesus, right? I would have some problem with that. So how do you explain this Jesus out of unbecoming of Jesus moment? Out of his character. Should we make some excuses to lighten up what Jesus has said a little? Should we do that? There were some theological scholars came out with some suggestions about to defend and try to make an excuse of what he just said. Just lighten up a little. They said that one suggestion from them was that Jesus actually did not call her, referred her as dog, but he actually called her puppy, adorable, like a likable puppy, right? But either way, whether dog or puppy, it's the same canine family, right? You don't call somebody by that name. And there was other suggestion. There was Jesus actually was trying to test her faith. He's trying to be rude and to see whether she would buckle. But she passed the test. I think that's kind of a lame excuse. So how do we rescue Jesus out of this unbecoming of Jesus moment? How do we explain this? My explanation, Jesus made a mistake. He blew up. He called her name. And just like all of us, we make mistakes. We blow up once in a while. Jesus was a human being. Like all of us, and sometimes when we get out of our condition and we burst out. And we let other people know. And sometimes we get kind of rude, just like all of us. And he was like that. He was a human being after all. I mean, this was not the first time he was out of his character. First time he actually had a burst of emotions. Remember that first miracle he did in the wedding at Cana? Remember all of that story, folks? He was invited, he and his disciples were invited to a wedding in the Cana, town of Cana, and he was toward the end of the festival, which meant that there was no more wine. And he got there, by the time he got there was more wine, and he kind of got irritated about that because no wine, no fun, right? So he got invited over there, he got no wine, and he was kind of a bit irritated about that. And his mother came along and says, Jesus, there's no more wine. And he got just, what do you want me to do, woman? That's what he said. He called his mother woman. You don't call your mother that name. He just burst of that. So we see quite a few occasions where Jesus is out of his Jesus kind of character that we would think. So I am not going to make an excuse for Jesus out of character. So how would you save the Savior from this unbecoming of Savior moment? Well, here comes this Gentile woman. And she comes in, the one who has been rudely rejected and dismissed, one who's been called as unworthy as a street dog, the one who's been a target of Jesus' outburst. She comes in and she rescues Jesus. This is what she says. And this is my paraphrasing of what she says. She says, Master, I know I'm not worthy. I'm unworthy, Master. Now I know that you don't mean what you said. Master, I know that I'm as unworthy as any street dogs. I know it's right for you to call me that name, but I know that in your heart you are generous even to the dogs like me. She knew Jesus. She knew why Jesus came to this earth to restore God's kingdom, and she knew there's a wideness of God's grace for all people, even to her. She in fact knew that Jesus came to this earth for that very purpose, to be among the untouchable, to scum of this earth, to be among with unworthy and dogs of this earth, to be with her kind of people. She knew. Her response to Jesus' outburst, she responded in a sense of humility and wisdom, so much so that she won him over and then, in a way, saved Jesus' face. Saved Jesus' face. Not only that, it was sort of a turning point in Jesus' ministry, kind of stretched Jesus outside the boundary of one nation. From this onward, before this point, Jesus was ministering toward those people who were Israelites, the chosen people in one nation. But from this point onward, Jesus began to minister toward those people outside of one nation, toward all people. Kind of gentle nudge from this simple woman. Not only challenged Jesus to change his mind, but also helped him to stretch beyond the small boundary toward all people. The faith of this simple woman. When was the last time you've been stretched beyond your own comfort by the unexpected, the least worthy sources? The voices from the margin that have changed your mind, your assumptions, and stretched you beyond what you've ever thought possible. I think I shared with you about my ministry for 2 years that I did in First Nations in Alberta, a little bit of that part, but that 2 years has been the turning point in my life. I've never learned that much in 2 years in my experience in First Nations as I ministered toward these people. Basically, I thought I was there. We have all these ideas about when we think about First Nations. We have this view about First Nations people, sensationalized. Like people out there, they're all drunk and they cannot manage themselves. They're like all of that kind of stories. And I had that about 20 years. I had that kind of worldview about that. And I thought I was, I thought I was like going over there. And I had this sense of arrogance about myself. I'm coming from a big city, right? and kind of star, minister over there, a place like out of nowhere. They don't deserve me, sort of, kind of arrogant. They're kind of unworthy, right? So I had this kind of arrogant. I went over there, kind of imperialistic, kind of colonizing kind of mindset, over there to change them. They're the lost and I am the savior, sort of thing. But 2 years of the ministry over there, through their gentleness, through their humility, through their patience, through their wisdom, through their stories, it changed my mind, fundamentally changed who I am as a minister, as a person. It changed my philosophy of ministry from that place, through the voices from these First Nations people. I didn't expect that. I thought it was like the least worthy people, and then the wisdoms through stories have changed me forever. As you know, we have this tree and the root. We've had this for about 2 months in June, middle of May to June, as we are going through visioning journey together. And we brought this back to kind of reconnect with our before. This tree kind of represents who we are as a church, Knox. And this root system is kind of representing our ministry going out into our community. If you can look at your back of your bulletin, there is kind of small picture of a tree and the root system going out into the pavements. Now you notice that as the roots, our ministry is going out into our neighbors and community, the roots are kind of being shaped by the formation of the path, right? You see that, right? So, which kind of representing as we go out into our community, we don't only shape our culture, but we are being shaped by the voices, by the challenges of our culture. And that's what this is about as we go out into our community, through our ministry, through our new vision. We need to not only minister, but also we need to be able to open to hear from the voices from the margin, from our neighbors, and to challenge us to change us, but also change the shape of how we do our ministry. So it's good to let the dog in our lives. And I encourage you to listen to God's voice in the margin, to change you and stretch you beyond the place and beyond the boundary that you have ever imagined.